Hi, Neville, Marten here.
And I'm Richard Barrett.
Welcome to another Guitarist Tone Lounge. As you can hear and see, we are today demonstrating the new Boss Katana Gen 3 range. There are 7 products in all, starting from, I'd like you talk it through, Rich.
Okay, it's a 50 watt 1x12 combo. Then there's a slightly higher spec, the EX 50 watt 1x12 combo. And then there is the 100 watt combo, that 1x12, and then the 2x12. There's a 100 watt head, which also has 5-inch speakers in it, so that you can use that for practice when you're not plugged into whatever speaker rig you're using. Then I'm using the 100 watt 1x12 artist version, which has every new feature available on it. There's also a head version back there as well. The Gen 3 Boss amps, I guess the main thing to know about them before we get started is that there's been an overall upgrade, the available processing, all sorts of things like that. But one of the main new features is a new amp voice called Pushed, in addition to the other sort of acoustic clean crunch.
Right. As I understand it, Pushed is kind of when you take what was a kind of clean sound, just pushing into that very previously difficult to emulate sound of a valve amp just going over the edge.
Ironically, probably a sound that people were trying to avoid by getting bigger amps, but they've got this kind of crunchy edge to it, like a non-master volume amp or a Fender combo, and it's just become one of those sounds, hasn't it? And
yeah.
I suppose traditionally solid state amps have been thought of as not being able to do that, being a bit on or off, high gain or clean, and these respond and feel much more like you'd expect one of those old Fender combos, for instance.
Well, if you heard, I played each 7-sharp 9 chord, Richard played a great lick over the top. It sounded pretty incredible.
Oh yeah, that's the sort of the heavy sound. Yeah, I must say, and the thing with these as well is that out of the box, it's a little bit like somebody else's very well set up pedal board. There's so many features, and we obviously do have the knobs for real-time instant control, but these are based on the factory presets. You can hook this up with a Mac and go in the way you would in something like Pro Tools or Logic and do fine adjustments.
So you basically make it your amp.
Yeah.
Your rig. You turn this into your rig.
Personalise the whole thing. Yeah.
And I suppose the permutations are infinite, aren't they? Really?
Pretty much.
I'll quickly say here, I've got the 2x12 100 watt Gen 3 combo, and while it does have all the effects and all the various things on it, I'm going to be I've set up a really nice generic nice tone, little bit of gain, little bit of edge on it, a bit of reverb, bit of delay, but Rich will concentrate on this amp because this is the big one that's, you know, the important
flagship
models. Yeah, the flagship. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let's start with the features on the Artist 100 watt. Do you want to walk us through the features on this?
Sure, though I'll have to take a very deep breath first because there's quite a few. But starting next to me here, the amp modes. Now, I guess people who've seen the Katanas before will know that there's an acoustic mode optimised really for plugging in an acoustic guitar. It's like a fully separate acoustic amp, really, though you can still put the effects on and stuff if you want to. There we go to clean, self-explanatory, though I have found that the clean channel will start to edge up a bit towards the higher extremes of the gain. And we have a variation button up here that lights up red that in most of the channels seems to function a little bit like plugging into the higher gain input or putting on the bright switch. It sort of tightens up the lows and pushes the highs a little bit, and that can make it a bit gainier. And crunch is next. Oh, I beg your pardon, I've missed out one of the most important things, and that is the pushed, which we were talking about a minute ago, which just gives you that cranked non-master volume thing. Though I've found that with a humbucker you can get up to kind of Heartbreaker, you know, the intro to Heartbreaker kind of tone with that. Then we're into crunch, and I found myself playing 2468 Motorway on that, you know, that sound, and some of the Lizzie stuff, you know, Jailbreak era. Yeah. And then we have the lead, which is, you know, the higher gain, and brown, well, not so much higher gain, but maybe a bit more of a thuddy, sort of woody bass and more high mids, like Van Halen 1. Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. And all of those have got the variation, which is just another voice on the sound. And like I say, mostly like a bright switch. In the pushed, I found it sort of just tends to up the mids a bit. It behaves slightly differently. So we have all those sounds, and obviously we have the sort of the gain and the volume. But the thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the bloom button on this, which gives it a much more spongy bottom end.
Discrete little circuit of its own, isn't it?
Yes, it's an analog sort of circuit. And my personal experience of it was this little bit more attack and slightly more squishy, sort of spongy bass. So why don't I play a couple of things with the bloom sound? It will explain it much better than my words can. This is the preset that comes up when I go for the whatever number it is. It's quite tight at the low end, and if I put the bloom button on, it's hard to know how it will translate onto a recording, but what I'm feeling is that it's a bit slower to the response, and I'm feeling it more through the floor. Let's there's much more kind of low end.
Would you equate that to kind of the sag that you get on a valve amp?
I suppose I would actually, though it does seem to have a little bit more definition on the highs as well, so quite a hard sound to get.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit less 3D to me here in the room.
Yeah. It's a very natural sound though, isn't it? If somebody said there was a valve amp in the next room, you wouldn't contradict that.
No, I wouldn't. No, absolutely not. Not even playing it.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's another thing that people say, isn't it? Oh, well, it sounds all right, but it's just a snapshot of a sound. Exactly. But I do genuinely find that this is...
Well, we've been playing them, and we've just keeping commenting after comment how natural they sound and how proper and realistic real they sound.
Well, I mean, we walked in and plugged them in and got some sounds and had a bit of a play and thinking, okay, this isn't going to be difficult.
No, that's exactly right. I'll cut across you for a second. You've got a little foot switch there. Does that come with the amp, or is that an optional extra?
It doesn't come with it. It's an optional extra, and I think it is essential for live stuff. Yeah. I mean, there are no functions via the foot switch that can't be accessed via the front panel. But this is great because I can click on the end button and kick in individual effects, or I can cycle around the presets, which is what I've done here really. This is preset from the factory. You know, you've got instant switching between the sounds.
So could you kind of run your gig from that essentially?
Yes, you could. 2 banks of 4. 8 sounds, but plus real-time controller, kick the end button, and I can, whatever effects I've set up. I mean, there are effects set up in there now. They're the factory presets, but you can go in and deep edit those and customize it to how you want. So yes, you can run the gig from it, and it's got a MIDI input as well. So you can, if you've got a MIDI controller already, you can do that. But this is convenient.
Yeah. As for the effects in the amp, are they kind of Boss effects that we know and love?
Yeah. They even call them by their same names, Blues Driver.
Do they?
I think there's the slicer in there, parametric EQs, graphic EQs, distortions.
Great.
I mean, loads of things.
I suppose like any other all-encompassing piece of kit, like the many things that we see these days, you use that as you want to use it. And if you're an all-singing, all-dancing guy and you use a different effect for this part of the song, you can do that. If you want to use it simply like an amp and 3 or 4 stomp boxes, you can do it. Then like you can
do that, and you've got the real-time control within any of the presets as well. So if I and I'm thinking, okay, well that's on the push, but I want it to be slightly less polite, and I'll just dial it up. I haven't affected any of the other settings. There is a mode where you can just go panel and it reverts to everything being exactly where the knobs are set. What I've done here is I've changed the preset. I'll take the variation. It's hard, you get this kind of EQ hangover. That's probably better with a drum kit and sizzling hats and cymbals, but in the room I thought, I'll take it out.
So that was the Bloom, which did sound great, I have to say. Yeah. So should we go through the rest of the features on the amp?
Sure. I'll be as methodical as I can. Moving on, we've got the bass, middle, treble that you'd expect to find anywhere. And obviously real-time adjustable, you can preset those, but you can reach back and take a bit of top off or put it on. So that's that, but there is this extra feature here, which will allow us to, it's the contour button, it will change the character of the mids. Right. At the moment, it's set to neutral, but it will add character. So each time I press the button, it will cycle to a different colour and a different character. And the way that I was hearing I'll start with it off and then click it onto the green and we'll compare. I think the delay's a bit distracting. And I'll take the reverb down a bit too. Next time I call up that preset, they'll be back to how they were. Or I could write them. Okay, that's green mode. I'm feeling a lower mid heft. Press it again, go to red. It seems a bit more aggressive and tight.
Yeah.
And then we have the orange. I'm thinking Vox, I don't know about you.
I was going to say Brian May territory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Staying clear of copyright, obviously.
Of course. Okay, we'll get into sounds more later on. What about the other features?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's very clever the way they've managed to make this accessible from the front panel. You obviously set up the fine details using the app. If you want to change anything about it, I mean, I guess it's good if people take a really good listen first and then only really change what they want to change. We've got the effects section, which includes the reverb, but we've got 2 concentric pots, and essentially we have different types of boost and drive that you can bring in or out, different kinds of modulation, so tremolo, chorus, flanging, phasing, any weird and wonderful effect really. And then there's a second set of concentric pots, which FX, so that's the really weird stuff, but you can configure it to be another chorus or another flanger. You basically can choose anything that you want to go in there. And the delay, which has a tap tempo button down there as well, so I would set it at the tempo I thought I wanted it to be. and then if I wanted to change it or suddenly make it into a slapback, I'd just hit the tap tempo. You can select the effects by clicking on the panel, or I need to turn them on by turning the pot. You can see we've got this green, red and amber system in place again. So that means that whatever the preset is or whatever effects that you have loaded in there, you can cycle between them if you want to on the fly. And there's the level button, so you can assign that in the deep editing as well. So if you find that there's a delay sound that you really like, but in the band it's getting a bit lost, you know how they do, it's not sort of wet enough, then you can just turn it up and do that. So that's, and you've got that twice over, so you can turn them off from the front panel by just zeroing the pot. Same thing with the effects and the delay. The reverb, again, we've got 3 modes. We've got the green, the red and the orange, and the green I think is more of a hall. Need to turn it up again now. More digital, and then okay, spring. And kind of more room, isn't it, or hall. Again, that's the presets. You can go in and deep edit. You might, a lot of people I find tend to lose a bit of low end off the reverb and just have the kind of halo of it. So you can do all of that stuff in the app.
It's incredibly comprehensive, isn't it?
Yeah. I hope I'm not making it seem more complicated than it is. It's just that you need some of these buttons. I mean, we're only sort of halfway along and we've already dealt with all that. And the next section is the master section, really, where you've got the resonance, presence, and the master volume. Resonance being the low-end thud overall, which you can trim. You know, you've got the bloom, you've got the resonance. All these can interact as well. I
mean, generally, I presume you'd find those things and you set them to how you want them, and then other stuff you tweak as you go, or you'd refine and use that as your basic sounds and your effects.
That's how I
and
would
everything.
see it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think me too.
Want it set, and then if a bit like you might set up a Kemper or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You use what you need for your gig.
Yeah.
And the way you work, and that applies to every single guitarist under the sun. Every guitarist would set that to how they want to use it.
Yeah.
But they're offering you every kind of permutation.
Every permutation and the ability to go, oh, it's a bit bright, or this, it's not sounding the way I want to in this room. I'll need to like add some bottom end or take it away. Then you can just reach around and do it.
People forget that as well. You know, if you play lots of stages, every room sounds different, so you do tweak your controls, don't you?
A hollow stage or something, you could have a nightmare. You know, you might end up reducing the resonance a bit, or you might have to put your amp on a riser or something like that, and you'll lose all the bottom end, so you can just turn up the resonance. I mean, there's more to that actually, because we can voice the cab with this. I'm skipping slightly ahead, but seeing as we're talking about this function, there are 3 overall voicings here which will do that. There's a deep voicing. I've got it on the modern voicing, and there's a vintage one which is slightly narrower band, you know, mellower highs, that kind of thing. So that can all come into play.
I mean, basically, you can use it as a pretty simple amp if you want to.
Yes.
Or you can take it to the limit.
Yeah.
I do like the sound of this when you play it. Is that a green back
it's
kind of speaker?
A Wazza. It's a custom designed speaker based on a 25 watt greenback, but capable of handling 100 watts.
Ah, I see. It does sound good.
So
it does sound very good.
I like the semi-open back. I like the spread of it, and I like the oversized cab, because sometimes that can be a thing. I think with a smaller cab it can be a bit boxy.
You don't want that.
You can't dial it out.
Same with this. I mean, this has got 2 12s in it, and again in a wide cab, and it's very open sounding. Very there's lots of bloom to it, that natural bloom to it, and the spread is nice. In fact, the 2 amps together sound really nice.
Yeah, they do work well together, don't they? Yeah, they're different.
Do. Especially with the single coils and the humbuckers as well.
Yes,
it's a lovely combination. But the nice thing that we both noticed is how they do react like a valve amp. And I don't want to keep saying, oh, they're like valve amps, they're trying to emulate valve amps. That's what every amp wants to be. Wants to sound like the best amp that you've ever heard. Yeah. And in our history, they were generally valve amps. They were all those names we know and love. and these are doing it pretty brilliantly. In
I
my
must
view.
say.
In my
I
view.
must say, yeah.
And when you turn down the guitar, you could it works differently.
Yeah.
When you change pickups, you can completely hear this different pickup sound, and that's not
I
always
used
been
to
the
find
case.
with some of the old pedals, like the fuzz pedals and things like that, you could go neck pickup, bridge pickup.
Yeah, those old multi-effects.
Really,
There's so much here. Nothing's
those,
But these they really react to what you put into them, which is what everybody would say a great classic amp would do.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're being.
It's not controlling
what you're putting in.
You're controlling it. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and you've got, push buttons for accessing the presets above, which does a similar job to the foot switch, so you can either or. But something that's kind of cool about this and missing from a lot of amps is this solo mode. You can do a master volume boost, and if you want, then you can add in a dedicated delay with its own tap tempo, so you don't have to kind of always, if you're the kind of player that doesn't play the whole gig on presets or a set list, and you sometimes just get someone going, take a solo or whatever, then you can hit the button and you've got a preset delay and a volume boost.
That's great. That's
accessible
really nice.
At any time in any of the settings, which I think is
you were just talking about gig that you do, where you get a couple of moments like that. So that would probably be ideal for that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Or even if there's a really important lick and someone says, that's not really coming through, you go, well, no problem. You can just go, and then come out again. So,
but I mean, it sounds like they are very, very usable amps.
Somebody's put a lot of thought into this.
If you tailor it to how you want to use it. I mean, as a simple kind of character, I'd set it, I've got one of those modelling machines.
Yes.
And you can do anything you want with it. And I use it very, very simply, but it sounds great. And it works for me.
Once you get it how you want.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. It's fantastic.
So we might as well finish looking at the front panel then, I suppose, because there are a couple more dials, aren't there? And
there are.
There's the air feel. What do they call it there? The line out air feel. Essentially, we've got them mic'd, but we've also got these rigged up through balanced line out. Though you can do jack out as well. And we've got cab emulation. And factory loaded presets are there's a close mic, a distant mic, a close mic and a distant mic, and there's the custom where you can go in and deep edit and you can create your own effect using those. So I mean, perhaps it'd be an idea if I just play a couple of chords on each and switch between the two. We went for the combination of close and distant. Where would I be without A? That was just to show off some more of my vocabulary there.
D as well.
Yeah. And this is the close. It's a very different sound, a little bit harder, and and then we've got the distant. And then there is a custom mode which you can configure in the deep editing mode when you've got the USB thing in it, or even with the Bluetooth app as well, if you want to get into that.
So the amps also they've got power scaling, so you can go from the full 100 right down, and what they don't do is just change the volume. If you think of a valve amp, say that's got 4 EL84s in it, for instance, if you've got a facility to take that down from 30 watts to 15, it'll switch off 2 of the valves. This does a similar kind of thing to that. So you're not just turning down the volume, you're changing the way the amp works.
I had one of those 2550 heads years ago, and that was like trioed and pentoed or whatever, and it was a different characteristic. Yeah,
it does. I mean, it does, and they do sound different as well. I had a 30 watt switchable combo, and if by accident it was on 15 instead of 30, I could tell.
Yeah,
not because it sounded worse; it sounded a bit different. And
And this does go all the way down to bypass as well, so that's quite nice. You can just leave it like that.
So it could actually do the bedroom thing if you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Or it could do full throttle.
Yeah, because there's a headphone socket
stage
as well where you can use the speaker emulations and everything. Yeah. So
I did notice earlier on that they're not insubstantial things either. That they do weigh don't
yeah,
they? They're
yeah. I
not,
mean, it's not as heavy as a valve amp, but it's
No.
not. Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
be showing off too much, throwing it around. Yeah.
but we just really. I mean, I'll give you just a quick burst of what mine sounds like, because it's one of the important amps in the range. It's probably the top end of the
Yeah. Of the non-artist.
the non-artist ones. Here's just a good old G chord. I've got my treble pickup turned down a little bit in terms of its treble. So here, when I pick that more lightly, even with that slightly sharp third string. Really natural sounding amp. I've got all the effects if I want them, but we're concentrating on this. But I thought I'd show you just how this one sounds. Very natural and very weird. And the twin speakers does give it that breadth, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does. And though this has got those extra features on it, these are upgraded too, aren't they?
They are.
You can really
They
hear
are.
that.
I want to challenge you to see if you can come up with some classic sounds that we hopefully could recognise.
Right.
Won't take too long about
In
it.
a non-copyright way.
Non-copyright way, but kind of hinting at.
Right.
And I was thinking, first of all, let's go back to 1966 to the Beano album.
Ooh, right. Okay.
I'm thinking combo,
Yeah.
humbucking guitar.
Okay. I think I know what you're talking about.
Not too
I don't
much
know whether to
gain,
go pushed or
brightish.
crunch. Maybe I'll go pushed. Right. Let me start by getting a preset that's kind of. I don't want delay. I'm using the foot switch to switch between modes so I can turn the effects off. Right, I think I'm getting quite close. I'm getting quite pleased with this already, though I might put the green mode on, which reminded me of those kind of graunchy lower mids that you get slightly less of the top and presence. I'll gain it up a bit more to simulate volume than actually to make it more distorted. And what am I doing? I'm forgetting bloom. Maybe I'll gain it up a little bit more with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I know which track you're aiming
Not
for
playing.
as well. I mean, tonally, because there's a lot of different tones on that. I was thinking of the more bright sound. That's the kind of hideaway sound, which is that big fat sound. But
So I tend to default to that because that's just such a sound on
you're
that
always
track.
hiding away.
Oh, yes, it's in my nature.
Okay, just put a bit more treble on it to get a bit more like
the bloom can help with that a bit actually,
Yeah.
and I'll give it. Yeah, sorry, I'm squinting.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting exactly. That's not the idea.
mean, we
if you
could,
twiddle
but-
with that for a few more minutes,
Yeah.
you get right in. Okay, another
I think the
one.
nice thing is, yeah, you really are. You recognise the sound and go, okay, and then you're sort of free of that kind of searching for a sound, and then you just can tweak.
Okay, well, that was an amp that we know and love from kind of the Bletchley area
Yeah.
of the country. What about something more Dartford based?
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, I suppose the first thing that I would do then is head for the contour button.
Okay.
I was on the green, definitely not red, but almost certainly orange. And I might just lose a little bit of high end. I don't know, let's see what that's like. And I wonder, not fast enough. Can't do it without shaking my whole body, but you get the idea.
I do.
I mean, straight away though, that mid character that's the battle one almost.
And
then
what
just
I
trim it.
noticed is when you were doing the kind of the suspension part of the chord, all the overtones were coming out,
Right.
as you'd expect they would do,
Yeah, yeah.
because of it's actually reacting against the guitar, with the guitar, to the guitar, in a nice way.
Yeah.
Okay, one more for you.
Right.
Let me think. How about Bricks in Walls?
Oh, right. Are we talking rhythmic or are we talking...
I'm thinking maybe a little bit rhythmic, and then you kind of bash into a bit of lead, perhaps.
Right. Well, I think, again, probably pushed. Let me see. I'm going to come out and go into the amp standard mode, I think, for that.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really great mode as well. The
Yeah.
other three are additional. Let's see where I am. Maybe a bit dirty, but I can just come out of it there.
Well, I mean,
In a
that
couple
was
of
minutes,
seconds,
that was
never tried to
minutes.
do it before. It's not bad.
I mean,
is it?
not that it's all about emulating people, but it's nice to show that you can get all these kind of sounds and
Yes,
pretty
yeah.
quickly.
And I tend to think in types of sound, if I'm honest. It's
Yeah.
not a complete adventure. I think, well, I want that kind of sound, and then I'll trim it to...
Exactly.
It's
And
all
I know
right.
you know this amp a little bit better as well because you've been reviewing it. But what's nice is you kind of intuitively knew what you needed to do with the amp to go for the sounds that
Yeah.
you were going for, which I think is quite telling. It shows that you've actually understood what the amp does.
yeah, and that, believe me, that means that it's not too hard to
Yeah,
understand as well. I tend to run a few pedals in front of a clean amp when I'm using an amp
Yeah.
a lot of the time, and that seems to be easier.
Yeah.
But I have to say that, yeah, I mean, I use things like Logic Audio as well and stuff, and I've used the Kemper stuff, and so there's nothing here that's kind of weird and special requirements or...
No, and we don't want to be Luddite about things. I mean, I don't use overly... I do actually have a modeler, which I use. But most guitarists today are familiar with all those things.
Yeah.
A lot of people do record their stuff. They do use multi-effects. They do use modelers. They do use complex systems.
Yeah, things have evolved.
So, okay. Do you want to challenge me?
Right. Looking at that guitar, I'm thinking, can you do something like Hank?
Wow, Hank Williams.
Hank Wangford.
Okay.
I'm thinking Hank of the Shadows.
Okay. Well, I can try. My controls are on the top panel.
Yes.
Unlike yours. So I will have to have a bit of a tweak around for a bit, and I'll be back to you in a second. Okay, I've had a bit of a fiddle with the top panel, and I've come up with a nice, what I think is quite shadsy kind of sound. So here we go.
I really like that tape delay. It's got that kind of, it's quite soft, but there's a clarity to it. It's not one of these muffled, ooh, I'm an analog delay, you know, type presets.
Yeah, it's nice. I've probably got a little bit too much gain on there. But
I do think that's quite Man of Mystery, though, with the
it
bit of
is,
gain.
yeah. Foot Tapper had quite a bit of break up on it. Pushed before pushed was invented.
I thought that was very Shadows indeed. And I was staying in the Fender frame of mind because of your Strat. What about some Jimmy? But I'd like to ramp up the difficulty even more and say if it was a little bit Wind Cries, Mary, and then maybe using the guitar's controls to, you know, bring up the volume and go more voodoo.
Okay, now that is a tough challenge.
Yes.
Okay, I think actually, given that Jimmy did use quite a lot of echo from time to time, I think all I'm going to do on here, and I don't need to even stop the filming, is just go from the Shadowsy sound was the pushed, and I'm going to go up 2 notches to lead. You can hear
that's ready to wail.
it's ready to go. Okay. My Strat, I've turned the neck pickup down to about 6, the volume down to about 6 on neck pickup.
And I forgot to say that the guitar must be on fire as well.
Well, I was on fire.
Yes,
Nearest.
indeed. That's what's great. Actually, that really highlights, I suppose, what we're looking to get across here, because you can hear it in the room and feel it in the room, but hopefully that shows anyone, even if they're watching on their phone, that you can go from one tone to another.
Well, what was interesting to me was I went from a Hank sound by just going 2 notches from the pushed through the crunch into the lead, and I've changed pickups and stuff, and it's amazing how you can.
I really like
all
that
these
we
sounds.
can do this. You can do it without overwriting your presets unless that's what you want.
Yeah.
You can click to panel mode, which absolutely kind of removes any kind of preset, and you're just getting the face value settings of the knobs.
Exactly.
But I really like having the preset as something to build on, like that.
Well, that's exactly. I don't want any more challenges. Thank you very much. That's pushed me to my limits. Okay, let's have a look at the kind of gig, kind of person might use these various amps. Okay, put yourself in this situation. You play mostly in the bedroom, occasional small gig, might rehearse with some mates, bit of recording perhaps. Where would you go?
I mean, that probably, depending, it might be the 50, because you could, that's got most of the features, hasn't it? I mean, I know
Yeah.
you don't have the line out.
No.
You wouldn't be able to take a direct line out to the PA or anything, but you could mic it.
Yeah.
And it's still quite loud.
Yeah. Small enough for a back seat.
Small enough for a back seat, nice and light. And it's got all the effects, everything that the bigger amps have got in that way. So there's that. And if I kind of really felt that I wanted to have ease of operation and plug it straight into the PA and get a great tone, then I'd go up to the EX.
Yeah.
I suppose. So that's, I guess that's where they sit, and I'm guessing that's who Boss are aiming those at.
Yeah, and that's a kind of all-encompassing version, really, isn't it? Without being all singing, all dancing.
Yeah, you wouldn't be paying for features you don't need.
No.
But you can completely get lost in the app and tweak your delays and weird effects.
And it's still not too big. It's still wieldy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Guitar in one hand and that in the other.
Exactly. Okay, Rich, have you got one for me?
Yeah, I think so. Let's say that I've got a good job, but weekends I like to play with my wedding band. So budget's not limited. I mean, I think we were looking at 250, something like that for the basic model. I've got more than that to spend, and I don't mind lifting something bigger.
Okay.
I need everything from Mustang Sally to Enter Sandman with the wedding band. Though I do live upstairs, so I don't want backache.
Okay, well, I've just been playing this. As far as I'm concerned, for me, it's got everything that I could need on an amp. It's got all those effects. It's got the line out, so if you were in a wedding band that had a decent PA, which a lot of them do these days, you could put that into it, not be mega loud volume. You could tune your volume to what the... if you got the optional foot switch as well, you could pretty much run the whole caboodle from there.
Yeah.
Although it's a tuba 12, it's not a backbreaker.
Yeah.
And that would do, I think, everything that you want to do, and a lot more besides. I mean, that would be your pub blues band if you wanted it to be.
Yeah, that's true.
And all points in between, and you could use that on a big live stage.
I think that's a really good point to make. Actually, made me think about that now, because some of those gigs, especially the blues band in the pub, that's sort of backline only a lot of the time, isn't it? So you'd want the extra push.
Yeah.
But to know that, because PAs have come such a long way, haven't they?
Incredible.
You could just take a jack lead out of the back of that into a channel of the PA and give yourself a bit of. And
if you were using in-ear monitors, you can take the volume right down. Yeah. So you're not killing the front of house engineer because they don't like volume, do they? So that's a very, very versatile amp, actually.
Yeah. So what about, I mean, we kind of know where we're going with this, obviously. Okay. I'm the kind of person that does play regularly with my wedding band, but I have an originals band too. And I want to get into being a session player and all that kind of thing. And I want my options open. I want the best that I can have.
Okay.
So where are you going to point me when I come into your shop on a Saturday?
I think you know where I'm going with this. Well, actually, it does depend, because some people, number myself among them, I like combos. Right. So if I were that person, I'd go for that, because that offers you everything that you can imagine that does, plus all those other features which you know far better than I do.
You always got the bloom and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly it seems to me I can't come up with a scenario where this wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
With all the connections on the back, there's an effects loop. There's a power amp in.
Yeah.
There's the MIDI foot switch if I wanted to go in that direction. There's the balanced line out jack line out. There's a headphone out. Can use the Bluetooth thing with it, or I can plug it in. So I feel that this goes further than the floor-based units that we know about and love, but this is an amp as well.
Yeah.
With real-time control over the parameters.
Yeah. Plus you can go into it, deep editing and do exactly what you want. So I
suppose head or combo. I suppose that's always been a question, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah,
it's
a lot of people are
thing.
just dedicated head and cab people.
Yeah.
And, if you want that look behind you, if you want that look which is bigger than that, a lot of people don't like stages without amps on. And some people like to see a row of stacks behind them.
Yeah.
So, a certain type of person will like that.
Yeah. And again, like the other head, actually, that is a more fully featured version. Well, it doesn't have the speaker in it, I suppose. There's that. But
so you'd have to get yourself a speaker.
You all use the headphone thing, or do a silent out into your computer, into Logical Pro Tools.
Yeah. And you could presumably use that on a stage, DI'd into the front of house, and you wouldn't need a speaker cabinet.
Yeah, no speaker cab at all.
So,
well, and that could have been another one of my sort of questions, I suppose. Sometimes I want to use a cab, sometimes I can't.
Yeah, exactly. I think the upshot of this is, and to be careful, this doesn't sound like sales speak because that's not why we're here, but there is something for pretty much every type of guitarist here, isn't there?
Yeah,
I can certainly. If you ask me my own personal thing, I'd have that.
Yeah, I think
because I've sat here with one guitar, I've twiddled about with the knobs, not overly comprehensively, and I think I've got some really great sounds out of this with one guitar. And there's plenty more in there that I haven't even touched. I haven't put a Les Paul through it, 335, all cut with Telecaster, and they'd all elicit very different sounds because they do handle whichever guitar you put through it very, very well.
It would hear that, yes, absolutely. It's like we were saying earlier with the old like fuzz or distortion pedals. You don't even know what pickup you're on.
Yeah.
But you would get an absolutely different sound.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I've kind of gradually gone smaller with amps over the years. Tuba 12 would have been the minimum, but having heard this in this oversized cab in the open back, I'm pretty impressed with that because I'm getting to that stage where putting it in the car is like...
Yeah, and that greenback styled 100-watt single 12 in there, it does give that a good old classic sound, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound modern and bright and brittle.
Oh, no, it's not hard or anything like that. And I think that the other thing is it would be enough, possibly enough to fill the venue. I mean, I'm just thinking if there's a drum kit, as far away from me as you are now, then... all right, well, I'd probably want to be on in-ears or something, or I'd have it on a stand, and maybe I'd take a line out and just do the sort of spread in the room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd had my volume on about, and you heard when I did that Hendrix thing, that was pretty loud in the room, and my master volume here is on about a third. So that's going to go
they are loud.
Quite a lot louder, a lot louder.
Yeah, they're really loud.
So, there's a lot there. They've clearly thought it through.
Yeah, I know that if you got one of those old 50-watt Marshall heads, then that's a different kind of loud. But these are loud enough.
They are.
Lots of headroom and stuff.
They are. They do. They kind of do what they say on the tin, and there's loads that you actually can't see in the tin.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Because I think that you can regard it just as a traditional amp and just use it with the factory presets, which, are not daft.
No.
Sometimes you get those multi-effects where it sounded like a bomb going off or whatever. They're well thought out.
I think they've learned a lot from those old days where you put the preset in and it was a totally unused thing, unusable thing,
hilarious.
Just to show you what the thing can do.
Yeah.
But they don't do that anymore.
But if you've ever sent an email, then you'd be able to work out how to program this for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But I warmed to this amp a lot. I haven't played through that, but I could take this out tonight and gig with it and understand it, and people would say, "God, you sound great tonight." Maybe your playing doesn't, but the amp does.
Well, then it's just big enough and heavy enough that you...
Exactly. So there we go then. This has been the Boss Katana Gen 3 range. I've been Neville Marten.
I've been Richard Barrett.
And if you like the video, please like and subscribe and share. And we'll see you next time.